two cabinet members were, quote, ready to support an effort to remove the president from office. That is according to former top FBI lawyer James Baker in a closed-door testimony to Congress last fall. Baker said he was told by senior Justice Department officials that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein spoke of the two cabinet officials' support. I want to bring in right now Republican Congressman John Ratcliffe from Texas. He is a member of the Homeland Security and Judiciary Committees, as well as Oversight. And, sir, it is good to see you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria.
We want to get your take on this story. You are a former federal prosecutor, Congressman, and we learned some information this week on two fronts. The Senate told us that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia after 2 years of investigating this. And number two, Andrew McCabe, the former deputy director at the FBI, in an interview with 60 Minutes tonight, said that he launched the investigation into President Trump. Your reaction?
Well, as to the collusion issue, the Senate just confirmed what the House and every other investigative committee has found, which is no evidence of collusion. And as you mentioned, Maria, the only person in Washington so far that says they have evidence of collusion between Donald Trump and the Trump campaign and Russia is Adam Schiff. And, of course, he says that is evidence that is neither direct evidence or circumstantial evidence, which are the only two types of evidence that exist in the law. So we'll wait on that. But as to the issue of Andy McCabe, he may be a disgraced former FBI agent who's been criminally referred for lying, but he's going to make at least one truthful statement in this interview tonight. Many of us have been saying for the last year that senior leaders at the FBI and the Department of Justice have been secretly investigating Donald Trump and trying to remove him from office. Tonight, Andy McCabe will tell you that he and other senior leaders at the Department of Justice and the FBI were secretly investigating Donald Trump and trying to remove him from office. Now, once you get past that one truthful statement, the rest of his story, frankly, has bigger holes in it than the Titanic.
Well, I mean, look, we heard from Bruce Orr in that other testimony a couple of weeks ago when he did tell us that, in fact, he met with the Fusion GPS founder as early as August of 2016, and we did get that testimony was quite illuminating in terms of what did go on.
It did, and we've gotten a lot of testimony. As you pointed out, Maria, as a former federal prosecutor, I will tell you that as a conspiracy starts to unravel, sometimes the co-conspirators turn on one another, and you get inconsistent testimony. Bruce Orr's testimony is inconsistent with his boss, Sally Yates. Andy McCabe's testimony is inconsistent with his boss, Jim Comey. Jim Comey's testimony is inconsistent with his lawyer, Jim Baker. McCabe's testimony is also inconsistent with Rod Rosenstein. So you have all of these things that were taking place, and again, it underscores the point that there were senior officials at the Department of Justice that were the same officials that had undermined and prejudged Hillary Clinton as innocent, prejudged Donald Trump as guilty. Right. And they were the ones making the decisions in these investigations.
So here we are beginning week one for the new Attorney General. He is now in the job, Bill Barr. Tell us about what you're expecting from him, because people would like to see accountability. And we should point out that Andrew McCabe is doing this interview around his book, but he has already been referred to by the Inspector General for criminal charges.
Yeah, so let's go back to Andy McCabe and what you're going to hear tonight. One of the things he's going to say is that he started this investigation when Jim Comey got fired on May the 9th because he believed that order may have come from Vladimir Putin and that Donald Trump was acting as an agent of the Russian government in carrying out that order. The problem for Andy McCabe is every newspaper in America reported that 8 days later, on May 17th of 2017, Andy McCabe was one of 4 people to walk into the Oval Office and interview with Donald Trump to become the FBI director. So how do you go from, I think you're an agent of the Russian government committing treason, to 8 days later, I think you're an agent of the Russian government committing treason, but I'd sure love a job working for you every day. So this is just part of the challenge that faces Bill Barr. I will tell you, it's an incredible challenge, but he has the opportunity to be perhaps the most consequential Attorney General of our lifetime. Because he's going to have the opportunity to try and restore the American people's confidence in a Justice Department that has been torn apart by the darkest chapters that have been written under the Comey, Lynch, McCabe era of the Justice Department and its component agencies like the FBI. I would certainly hope that in engaging in doing that, the first order of business for Bill Barr would be to address the byproduct of those senior leaders at the FBI and the Department of Justice that were trying to undermine the American election of 2016, and that byproduct is the Mueller investigation.
Right.
If Bill Barr's first action, Maria, is not to bring in Bob Mueller and say, you know, the American public has been consumed with this for 2 years, and this idea of collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians. After 2 years, either you have evidence of it or you don't. And if you do, let's see it. And if you don't, let's make that clear to the American people so all of this can end and we can move forward with what the Department of Justice should be doing.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you've got people like Adam Schiff saying they're not going to slow down. They're going to expand the investigations into President Trump right now.
60 Minutes interview, McCabe admits that his attempt to undermine the president began almost immediately after his boss, Jim Comey, was fired. And it was, of course, due to Russia. Alan Dershowitz is a retired Harvard Law School professor. He's the author of the book, The Case Against the Democratic House Impeaching Trump, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks very much for coming on. So now the suspicions of many are confirmed by one of the players in it. The Department of Justice discussed trying to remove the president using the 25th Amendment. What's your reaction to that?
Well, if that's true, it is clearly an attempted coup d'etat. Relating to what your former guest said, let's take the worst case scenario. Let's assume the President of the United States was in bed with the Russians, committed treason, committed obstruction of justice. The 25th Amendment simply is irrelevant to that.
Right.
That's why you have an impeachment provision.
Exactly.
The 25th Amendment is about Woodrow Wilson having a stroke. It's about a president being shot and not being able to perform his office. It's not about the most fundamental disagreements. It's not about impeachable offenses. And any Justice Department official who even mentioned the 25th Amendment in the context of President Trump has committed a grievous offense against the Constitution. The framers of the 25th Amendment had in mind something very specific, and trying to use the 25th Amendment to circumvent the impeachment provisions or to circumvent an election is a despicable act of unconstitutional power grabbing. And you were right when you said it reminds me of what happens in third world countries. Look, these people may have been well-intentioned. They may believe that they were serving the interests of the United States, but you have to obey the law, and the law is the Constitution. And the 25th Amendment is as clear as could be. Incapacity, unable to perform office. That's what you need. That's why you need 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate agreeing. And it has to be on the basis of a medical or psychological incapacity, not on the basis of even the most extreme crimes, which there's no evidence were committed. But even if they were, that would not be a basis for invoking the 25th Amendment.
So this is not simply right.
And I challenge any left-wing person to get on television and to defend the use of the 25th Amendment. I challenge any of my colleagues who are in the Get Trump at Any Cost camp to come on television and justify the use of the 25th Amendment other than for physical or psychiatric incapacity.
I bet they're doing that right now. But this is an attack on our system, I would say, not just on the president. Alan Dershowitz, thank you very much.
It's an attack on our system, and it's an attack on the Constitution. Thank you.
Scary.
Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe telling CBS Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein raised high-level talks to consider how to kick the president out of office after Jim Comey's firing, and that Rosenstein was serious about his offer to wear a wire to record the president. Rosenstein denies it. But top Republicans are calling for hearings to get to the bottom of it. And now Andrew McCabe's office is saying, wait a minute, his comments were taken out of context. So what's going on here? Former Clinton advisor Mark Penn has some ideas. Mark joins us now. Mark, what a tangled web. Explain to the audience what you think is happening here.
Well, you can see why this group has earned the title Deep State. First, McCabe is pointing the finger at Rosenstein for trying to invoke the 25th Amendment and wiretap the president. Rosenstein says, hey, I didn't do that. But McCabe triggered the obstruction investigation and independent counsel. And on what basis did he do so? under, quote, the fear that he might be removed. He didn't do it on the basis of an actual crime that occurred. In fact, rather than being shunted away, McCabe was made acting head of the FBI. So rather than wait for a new FBI director to come in, be approved by the Senate, maybe look at these FISA warrants, maybe see that some things were amiss with this dossier, maybe see that Christopher Steele was fired for lying. Rather than that, they created the independent counsel so that they could have this investigation done by their own friends and supporters. And that's what was done here, and it's totally illegal.
You know, I want to read part of a statement that was released by McCabe's office yesterday. Part of it reads, at no time did Mr. McCabe participate in any extended discussions about the use of the 25th Amendment, nor is he aware of any such discussions. He was present and participated in a discussion that included a comment by Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein regarding the 25th Amendment. That's from Melissa Schwartz, and she's a spokeswoman for Andrew McCabe. That was on Friday yesterday. Mark, you know, when I saw the statement come across, I was like, whoa. I mean, because the way this is playing out, the 60 Minutes interview, almost an admission, for lack of a better word, a de facto coup, that the FBI decided that they didn't like the outcome of this election, and they were plotting on how to count enough noses in the cabinet to possibly trigger a coup.
Well, that's right. They didn't like the outcome of the election. And more importantly, they didn't like that their director was fired. And all of this was a retaliatory action for the director being fired, even though Rod Rosenstein wrote the memo to have him fired. They all got together and said, well, maybe we can use the 25th Amendment. Maybe we can get him out this way. Maybe we can hold a wire. Oh, maybe we can do an independent counsel. All in retaliatory action for the firing of James Comey. What a deep state. What a mess. McCabe was fired for lying. Who knows who is telling the truth here? All three of these top figures contradict each other multiple times on multiple stories.
The overarching theme here, though, is that you had the highest levels of the FBI who had a degree, varying degrees of animus toward candidate Trump and then President Trump. Some who had actually talked about taking actions if somehow he were to win the election. And then we get evidence that the FBI kicking around the idea of somehow invoking the 25th Amendment, getting 8 of 15 cabinet members, nose counting, if you will, to go ahead and try to remove the duly elected president of the United States. This is shocking stuff.
It is totally shocking stuff. It is the making of movies like 7 Days in May. It is everything we grew up fearing about the people that we give the greatest trust to in the government. The 25th Amendment does not apply to the FBI. It applies to people in Congress, in the cabinet, for extraordinary circumstances, typically related to the health and of the President of the United States, none of which had any application here whatsoever. The whole thing is incredible, but even if they didn't use the 25th Amendment, what they did was trigger a series of things that now has created a 2-year investigation. And look, there's a new Attorney General coming in. And look, the Attorney General should tell Robert Mueller, hey, wrap this up, get out your conclusions, and you know what? If you want to continue investigating, how about having Democrats and Republicans on your investigation team? How about having a balanced team in order to have credibility? Make some changes that are constructive if Robert Mueller isn't ready to finally give his report and move on.
Mark Penn, thank you very much.